Sell the problem, not the product. If you answer those three questions, why now? How are you different? And why does it matter to me? Then they're going to raise their hand and go, oh my God, show me how it works. What's your viewpoint? Bring the market something different they haven't thought about. In the absence of any differentiation, what's a buyer going to do? They're either going to do nothing or they're going to go with a brand name company. Stop explaining, start inspiring.
Bob, thanks for coming on. I got to tell you, the specialty you have is something Matt and I haven't dug in on. So like, we're very excited for both you and the topic. And so, this will be a great experience for us, and don't fret if you're talking and we're just listening, because we're going to learn. We learn as much as, it's part, we started the show because Matt and I were sitting there. A, we have fun talking to each other, but B, we had this thing, which is like, the playbook for B2B go-to-market is continuing to evolve. Like, let's, who can we talk to go continue to understand what works and what doesn't? And so we're like, let's do a podcast. And so
from ABM to PLG, from Medic to MedPick, the world of business is constantly evolving. We'll cover the who, what, where, when, why, and most importantly, how you get the transaction. I'm Matt Amundson, and he's Craig Rosenberg. Let's get started.
So, Matt, Bob came to me through AJ Gandhi. Do you guys ever have this experience where you meet someone or you learn about someone and then all of a sudden they're just in your life, like all over the place? So
like the red Corvette, you're right. You buy a Corvette and then you see one everywhere.
Yeah. So with Bob, I met him and I'm like, wow, this guy's unbelievable. And then now I'm like, all these folks that yesterday I got sent to LinkedIn and they did some work with Bob. And then I'm like looking at him, seeing him everywhere. And like everyone's talking to him. I asked someone for a positioning specialist. They're like, well, have you ever talked to Bob? I'm like going, whoa, dude, this guy is like, yeah, he came into my life. And now so this will happen to everyone else too. So Bob, we're just getting to know you. And so that's the lead in on how we found you. But like, if you were going to describe yourself and what you guys do in, 4 sentences or less, what would you say?
Yeah, we are very, very specialized consulting firm. We just do one thing. All our clients are B2B tech, and our core competency is positioning. So we help companies when they want to get more clearly differentiated in the marketplace, when they want to create urgency in sales cycles, when they want to hop up and get out of feature functions and hop up to more of an executive level conversation, and really carve out category leadership. That's typically where we get involved. And we have a process that we take executive teams through that's been honed from us just doing this narrow expertise of B2B positioning over and over and over again for over 300 different B2B tech companies and products. So I feel like we have the best practices around positioning. And I think particularly in today's tight buying climate, positioning now has moved to a forefront as a key lever for companies to drive revenue growth and certainly valuation.
That's amazing. If you were going to tell, we have the big question we asked, but Matt has changed me on the first one after the intro. Yeah, you've affected me, Matt, in a way that's going to help the show. What's like a story? I'm trying to think of how we'd think about it. It's 300 positioning clients. So and we love we love these stories from underdog to winner. Is there any kind of great stories over your years of folks that were, everything was kind of, I know you'd have to be careful, but broken and the positioning exercise just changed their fortunes in a way that was just unbelievable. What was that and how did they get, what would be your favorite story there?
Boy, there's tons of them.
I bet.
I can think of one. This is really, really typical. We work with this one client, and this was a number of years ago when the emerging category of identity as a service was morphing out of SSO. And Okta was just VCs were just throwing money at Okta, and they were just blowing this market up and taking away. And I had a client that had really gotten into the market earlier, but again, their market maker position was quickly in danger of disappearing and being taken over before it was too late. So they hired us, and we came in. And of course, they had Microsoft too in that market at that time too.
Yeah.
Which was a big player. So you've got a legacy established player that has account control, and at the same time you're competing against this disruptive company, really hot tech company out of Silicon Valley was creating this new category. And where do we fit in? And we're in danger of losing our position in the marketplace, and it's going to take off. At the same time, their sales cycles were like, oh my God, they were like, average selling price of a deal is like 90K. 70K, 40K. It didn't even sniff $1 million deal ever, So we got contacted by the founder, and he came to us and said, look, I've got a desperate situation here. This market will be gone in a year from now if we don't do something. So we came in and did a quick analysis, figured out what their assets were, and talked to a number of customers they had sold, and looked at the strengths and weaknesses of the respective competitors in the category, looked at the assets this company had, and we carved out a very unique position. It actually happened to be identity as a service, but it was around a security angle because they had some unique assets around security. And we created an executive level conversation around the importance of identity as a service, but particularly from a security angle, and carved out a unique corner of the category around the security angle. And boy, I tell you, 12 months later, he had 64 deals in the pipeline they sold that were 500K or more. And then he had sold like 17 $1 million deals. And they were bought then, 18 months later by a PE firm for like a 14x valuation. They since have gone public, and then they since have gone back to the VC, went private again, got bought out again. So it's just a real success story against, I would say, again, early category, formidable competitors, and how do you carve out a unique position that drives revenue? This isn't just branding of a nice logo or anything. This is positioning, right? How do I own and shape a category? And how do I accelerate revenue growth? And so they're a really, really good example. One of the many poster childs of companies we work with.
That was a good one. I actually have a lot of questions about it, but I'm going to hold it because we want to. In our last episode, I asked the big question with like 10 minutes left. All right. So here's the big one.
All right.
What's something that the market thinks is right, or they're doing right? It could be an approach, methodology, tactics. It could be more than one as well. And they're actually wrong, or they should be thinking about it differently. What is that, and what should they be doing?
Boy, there's a bunch of them. I think I'll frame it a little bit differently. I always say we're in the tech world. I came out of B2B tech. I was in sales. I was in marketing. You spend all the time with the product marketing folks and the engineering and the customers to bring out the new product. What's the first thing you want to talk about? Is the product and all its features. Wrong. Nobody cares. Particularly executive buyers don't care. They don't need any more tech. And frankly, they don't care how your product works. So I always say one of the key tenets to building category leadership and really driving significant revenue growth, particularly in today's tightened buying climate, is sell the problem, not the product. Mm-hmm. Sell the problem, not the product. Can you own a problem? Can you name it? A problem that your target executive buyer typically really, really cares about. Either make them a hero, or if they don't solve the problem, they're going to get fired. So one of the key tenets that I see companies get all wrong is they're so enamored by their product and technology. Every single story and presentation is all about them, all about us, how we're great. We got a company dog. We got all these features, got AI now. Nobody cares, right?
Yeah.
No, what's the problem you solve? And sell the problem, because people buy from pain. And then set the buying criteria up necessary to solve that problem and connect that to your differentiation. I think that's one of the big issues, I think, in our industry. We're just so enamored with our features and products.
Yeah. Matt, I think you've said some version of what Bob just said multiple times on the show.
Yeah.
So that was a real nodding of the head, right?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, this is the thing that I see as sort of an epidemic in the space, which is I often talk about the fact that there's almost never any kind of personal connection to product anymore. So like, what's my reason for buying? Not just,
Totally.
hey, this thing exists and can I map that to something that I need assistance with or I'd like to gain efficiencies around. But, you know, when I see product launches now pretty frequently, they are basically just people broadcasting a product sheet, right? We built this. Here's what it is. Here's what it does. Buy it. You know what I mean?
If you have time this weekend, buy it.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
right? And you know what's the problem is, particularly now, look at AI, right? We got AI. The great AI washing is upon us.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to have an AI wash. Now, can you imagine an executive buyer right now listening to all the vendors? That everybody sounds the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we always say it's a fundamental shift from a conversation about how the product works to a conversation about why it matters to your buyer. And a key and good positioning answers three key questions for your target buyers. Number one, why your product now? Not last year, not 7 years ago, but why now? What is the hairy, urgent, multi-million-dollar problem you solve? Secondly, how is your product different? How can you uniquely solve that problem? Including a lot of the competition today is frankly the status quo, do nothing.
Yeah.
But you can't forget the third question. How are you going to make my life better? How do you make me a hero? Show me a promised land. And if you answer those three questions, why now? How are you different? And why does it matter to me? Then they're going to raise their hand and go, oh my God, show me how it works. Then you can bring your demos and your product slides and all that kind of stuff. Everybody we're enamored by. But most tech companies do not clearly articulate the why they matter. And as a result, we got these stalled growth rates, no urgency in sales cycles, horrible win-loss ratios. We're too low in sales cycles. And you got all these desperate vendors now chasing, right? Fewer and fewer sales cycles.
Yeah. Actually, you know, that was the thing when you were talking earlier is that, you know, well, how many years have you been doing this?
Oh, geez, I haven't had a real job in years. I probably been doing positioning 20 years now. Yeah, geez.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
300.
I started when I was 14, so.
Yeah, that's right. Sam, I don't know how much has changed from what you're trying to help people go do. You might have a comment on that. But like your big point, which was earlier, which is like in this hyper competitive, hyper confusing tech world, if you don't differentiate, like now the urgency of your positioning is, I mean, I feel like we're in a like, this is like do or die.
Yeah. For a lot of companies, it is. It's a very, before we could kind of get by with lame messaging, feature function message, you could probably get by if you have a superior sales organization. Those days are all gone now. As you mentioned, the whole go-to-market model is completely different. The way our buyers buy is completely different. And it's a tight buying climate. Nobody needs any more technology. Like enough is enough. So I think in that kind of environment, again, positioning really moves to the forefront, but you got to do it right. What's really important is you have to have a viewpoint. What's your viewpoint, right? Bring the market something different they haven't thought about. Bring your buyers something they haven't thought about before. And typically it's around a problem, right? But bring them something that they can actually then go to the board and say, look, we got the XYZ problem. I think we need to solve it. Here's the 5 things we need to do it. And oh, by the way, I got a technology platform over here that can help me do it. But give them something that they can actually, I always put my head in the mind like a CISO. Geez, just think how many security vendors are out there. And what a horrible job, right? And the lifespan of the job is really short. But can you give them something to make them a hero to go in front of the board and actually give them added value, right? And or a different viewpoint. The board, give them something different to think about. So can you wake up the market with a different viewpoint? And again, can you solve a problem that your buyers really deeply care about? And that's, for me, that's the winning position strategies are the companies that are doing that. And there's some really good examples of companies that are doing that. And those are usually the category leaders, and they're usually the ones that are driving growth rates right now.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is a random question. I'll ask the crowd. So, Bob, you've done 300, but like that's out of tens, hundreds of thousands of companies. And then it does feel like some of these companies get hot and then start to think about the fundamentals of these things.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, you see it all the time. So what happens is, a company will get hot. They'll luck on an idea or a problem that's being solved. They have some new technology. They can solve it, and they create a category. Generally, it's a new category creator, right? They'll come in, they'll create a new category. We see it all the time. Then what happens is the category is created. All the competitors come flooding in. Oh, this looks like a good category. So all the big players come flooding in, and the market gets commoditized. And the company, again, the category creator is in danger of losing their category leadership position because now it's an undifferentiated, commoditized market. So in the absence of any differentiation, what's a buyer going to do? They're either going to do nothing or they're going to go with a brand name company. So usually, if you're an SAP, a Salesforce, a Microsoft, you want markets all to look commoditized, and Oracle, right? But for everybody else, it's a bad place to be. So in that instance, it's a great time to come in and do positioning because you got to move the needle again. You got to move the definition of the category again. And you have to be the one that wakes the market up and said, okay, this category is formed to this, but now it needs to move to this, and reshape the buying criteria and retake that category leadership position and move the buying criterion goalposts once again.
I love that. It feels like, like I said, I mean, this is the moment where you got to do it. And it's like, it's just, when you're winning, it's hard. When you're losing, I think your ears perk up and you got to figure out what you need to go do. But what you're talking about, like, I do look back, I was an analyst before, and like, you do look back at the category leader who lost. Mm-hmm. There was product issues, I think, in some cases, let's be honest, because they created a category based on promise and then other people came from behind. But like, had they thought about repositioning earlier, even as the leader, they could have headed off a lot of different, folks coming from behind.
The other big thing that we're seeing right now is because there's been a lot of acquisitions in our industry right now. We're seeing the need for portfolio positioning. So what happens is for growth, a lot of times companies are buying multiple companies. So they end up with a portfolio of 5, 6, 7 products. The issue they're running into is each of those products is typically a different selling motion. And there's point players that are in there just kicking their ass because they're modern technology, modern vendors. Right. And they're going, oh my God. So, and these companies typically have a good brand, but what they don't have and what's missing is portfolio positioning. The umbrella positioning about why all these products, they don't even have to be integrated, but why do we have this acquisition strategy? And what's the combined value and power of them? Can we set up an expansion motion? Can we at least have an umbrella conversation that can really help differentiate each selling motion, if you will? And we're getting involved in a lot of portfolio positioning right now.
Yeah, I bet you are. I mean, that's like everyone rolled up a ton of acquisitions. And as you said, then the innovators start coming. They're pecking away at certain parts of that market.
Exactly.
Like, but I'm just actually curious, like how do you handle portfolio? Sorry. I mean, that's always been hard for me to sort of think about, grasp, like when people, I've seen this before. So like, can you give us an example of like how you play the portfolio positioning?
It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Well, that's why they bring you in. Yeah.
Well, a lot of times, frankly, it's easier coming from the outside, typically.
Yeah, that's right.
We're working with one of the premier SaaS vendors, right? And they had 36 different products, and they had HCM products, finance products, planning products, right? The problem is they are organized by those products. So they had really good positioning for each of the individual products. They had a really good brand, but they didn't have the portfolio positioning. And the problem is they had to go to multiple buyers now, not only the HR buyer executive, but the finance executive and even the CIO. So our task was to come in and build a portfolio position that would resonate equally with all three of those executives. And again, it comes down, what's the common problem? And at that time, what do we call it? The acceleration gap. Companies were too slow, right? They're getting left behind, and it's going to get worse. And, and there's some combination of assets across all these portfolios that we identified that were common to them all. Process, the way they data core, right? Bringing all the data again, their ability to have business owners reconfigure processes, which were common across all those applications. So we looked for commonalities and build a case based upon this business problem. Here's some capabilities you need. And where do you want to get started? This product, this product, this product. But it needed to also, and then we had value propositions set up. I got this acceleration gap, but what are the questions that a CIO needs to answer? What's the questions that the CFO needs to answer? What's the questions that a CHRO needs to answer in the context of that problem? So it helped us elevate the conversation up equally to those three buyers, but also build, frankly, a larger conversation that their point solutions could sit underneath.
Yeah. Actually, I love that, because my other thing was you had said something. There's probably some redundancy here, because a lot of the things you said would lead up to this, but like the move towards the executive suite, the positioning. So it sounds like in a portfolio scenario, I can actually now tie this to any size company where you have multiple stakeholder. Like, well, I'll give you two problems, and then you could just sort of sort me out. One is most of the emerging organizations that come up through the user.
That's right.
And then they got to figure out how to get higher. So that's one. And then two is, as they get higher, get more competitive, and in this buying environment, they've got multiple stakeholders with their hands in the pot. So in that scenario, A, you got to get higher. B, you got to get through a bigger map than before. Are you looking for the positioning that catches all? Or are you looking, because you said in that on the portfolio play where it's like, no, we need to know what questions the HR guy has, and et cetera. So I'd love to hear your reaction. That is a pain that I see. It is, and I think we are B2B tech. One of the uniquenesses about us and why our firm is very unique, because I think it's not like B2C. B2B has complicated sales cycles with even more influencers and buyers than ever before in these sales cycles, right? So I think there's a couple of things. Number one, frankly, a lot of our clients can't get to an executive level. They never even talk to an executive in their whole life, right? They're lower level in the organization. So the opportunity is, okay, let's write the positioning for their boss, right? You see what I'm saying? And say, look, we'll arm you with this. Go take it up to your boss, right? So you make them the hero, if you will, in the eyes of their boss. That's a lot of times you look at it. But we always try to go high because that's where the money is. And we always say, if everybody says no and this person said yes, they'd still go with you. Who would that be? Oh, well, that's who we need to write the positioning for. And then we can spin it for the other influencers within the sales cycles. The other key thing that companies do all the time is they don't look at their next set of buyers. They're always positioning to the past. So when we show up, we say, okay, give us 6 customers we can talk to. They'll give us customers they sold like 5 years ago, right? They're premier customers. No, I don't want to talk to them. I want to talk to somebody that bought last year, or it's in a pipeline right now, or just, because the buying climate and the buyers are very, very different when the company first started versus where they are today. So the fundamental question is, where's the revenue growth going to come from? And what do those buyers look like? And they could be very, very different from where you've sold in the past. Yeah, I love that. And then there's a second part to it. And then this is very interesting to me. Yeah. So the big one too, Bob, you said like, who's going to get us our next set of revenue growth? So the other big thing that we see, for me, like we're A investors and I'll see B and C, you start to say, well, how do we go get into this market, right? There's the enterprise, which is the classic, right? Totally. Everyone sort of comes up to the tech mid-market and then they figure that out. Okay, so that's one. The other one is when they start to verticalize, they start to segment in with different groups of buyers. And they don't have the data per se as well for either of those moves. Tell us about that. Like, how do we approach that?
It's a real issue, if, okay, we want to go into XYZ market. Well, how many, we've sold 2. in the enterprise. Well, geez, that's not a big sample size, right? One was probably the buddy of the chairman.
Two's better than the one that normally people have when they make that
well,
call.
there's two.
That's right.
One your chairman's buddies with, and the other one you gave him money to buy, or something, whatever that is. But or it's your next door neighbor. So, what we do in that, the best way to do it is you actually go out and do formal market research, and that sort of thing. In the absence of that, because a lot of companies don't have the time or the budget or even the, patience to do that.
Yeah.
What you do is you got to validate it. So let's use your best guess, hunch, hypotheses, experience, right? We'll build the best positioning strategy and story based upon that. And then let's go test it. So we work with a market research firm that'll go out and recruit prospects, right, of your target market. And they'll test the story blind. And at the end, they do the reveal. But boy, then you'll know whether it's right on or boy, we really missed something. So in the absence of any market research, do testing validation in the back end.
I agree with that. And then for a lot of companies who can't even do the market research, I just tell them, take your best guess and go and come back every week. And
and that's why the validation helps, right? Because the issue with positioning a lot of times, one of the problems I see a lot of times with positioning is you build this story and the executive will go out and have a sales call, come running back. Oh, I got to change it, man. This guy, marketing analyst said something. Then a sales rep will go out. Oh, come running back. I got to change it. Then another sales rep will come back. Oh, we got to change it, right? And positioning is not code. Positioning is not code. It's not iterative code. Positioning is stick with the positioning until you are sick of telling that story. It's just when the market's starting to pick it up. Stick with it. A quarter. Do it a quarter, but have a feedback loop in there and just take feedback. Don't change anything. Just stay the course. And at the end of the corner, take a look at the feedback and then look at the patterns and then adjust it based upon the patterns, not just one single conversation or one single opinion. But I find that discipline a lot, particularly for some of the smaller tech-led, engineering-led companies, clients of ours. It's really hard to do because they're so used to just doing iteration. And I would suggest that's probably not the best thing to do when you're doing positioning.
Yeah. I think another big challenge that happens with positioning is when you have a core buyer, a core audience, and you're going to expand into, a new space, like, Greg was talking about enterprise, but maybe not necessarily exactly that. And how do you start to tell the story more broadly without sort of ostracizing your existing core buyer? That always ends up being one of the biggest challenges that I face as an operator. It's like, okay, our buyer looks like this and our ICP is like this, and we've got messaging and a product and the flywheel's going. And now we want to go do this other thing. We don't, I think in everyone's mind, the easiest answer is, you create this split on the home page where one goes this way and one goes the other. And that just, of course that never works at all, but everybody always hypothesizes that it could work. How do you think about that? Or maybe what are some of the steps that you give to your customers or in your process to do the risk mitigation there?
Yeah, I think there's two issues. Number one, you've been successful with one certain ICP, and now you're going to go to another one, next segment, which is a natural evolution for growth. The problem is who you've sold before is going, whoa, wait, are you diverting funds from me and from us and your core? Right. That's one issue, right? And then the other issue is just defocusing the company. I think what I always look at is, well, why are you going into this segment? What gives you the right to go into this segment? Mm-hmm. Oh, we're really good at unstructured documents that are really labor intensive. And that's why we did really well at this ICP. That unique IP is also applicable to this segment here and this segment and this segment. So what's the unique IP that is applicable? It may show up differently, but that's applicable to these and build a case like that. It's the XYZ unstructured document crisis, right? And it's hitting every company. We started here and that's where we honed it because it's really acute here. But, we found out here's some other segments. It's just as acute. But keep to that core, right? This is the core IP that is common across all these ICPs or segments.
Mm-hmm. By the way, really quick, you guys, I just got to divert. Sam, what were you laughing at? Did you hear me eating this amazing chocolate from Alaska Airlines?
Yes. It was so loud.
But
Was
Alaska really gives good food now, you know?
Yeah, it's got Rice Krispie, like popping Rice Krispie treats in it. It's amazing. Sorry, guys. I was worried that was the case. I just had to have some. It was just sitting in front of me.
I get it.
And whatever mail you were opening earlier. Sorry.
Sorry, Bob.
Multitasking. It's all right.
I'm not.
It's all
you
good.
know what, guys? I'm actually. The mail was I was getting my notepad out, but yeah, all right. Bob, is there what you said? There was a whole bunch of them. What else would you say about areas where the market should be rethinking approach? Any others you want to bring?
Yeah. In addition to sell the problem, not the product.
Yeah, love that
right?
one.
And look at your next set of buyers. And the other thing I always say is stop explaining, start inspiring. If you're explaining, that's not a good place to be, right? And then I think the other thing I mentioned before is why you matter, not how it works. Why you matter needs to be not why it works. But I would say, for me, what frustrates me a lot is positioning should be a CEO initiative. Mm-hmm. It is a strategic, it shouldn't consume the entire CMO's budget. The way we look at positioning, actually last year was the first time 75% of our engagements came through the board or CEOs. And it was the first time that happened that tilted. And what's happening now, I think particularly because of AI and this market climate, I think CEOs are waking up going, holy cow, But the CEO needs to own the initiative. The CMO needs to run the process, but the CEO needs to own it. It needs to be a company-wide process, and it needs to take budget out of everybody. Because if you do positioning right, it's going to impact sales. It's going to impact product. It's going to impact your employees, right? And probably customer success. So the most successful engagements, we actually require it now. If the CEO is not involved, we can't do it, right? They have to have when we run our process, we run it through the executive team. So we sit them all down in a workshop. It's 2 half days of an input, and then we come back 2 days later with a story. But that's the executive team because they all have to be aligned. And they all have to give their input into it. And they also have to all own it. Now, marketing runs the process and activates it. But boy, it should be a CEO initiative.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I was going to say, Matt, jump in. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The other thing that always happens when it's run by marketing, not in a silo or a vacuum, because it's usually multiple members of the marketing team, is like you get it, you nail it. You put the red silk sheet over it and you unveil it, and everyone's just kind of like,
what?
Nah, yeah.
Exactly. I used to do it that way.
Yeah, that's the thing that everybody hates. That's that moment where you're like, okay, cool. Here's 12 weeks worth of work, and everybody's pretty meh about it. And that's when you're like, God, this was a flawed process from the beginning. It needs to involve everybody, but certainly right. Getting people to dedicate their time to it is one of the hardest challenges there. And totally. I love the thought process of doing like a 2-day workshop and just kind of banging it out really fast.
We do, and that's the thing. There's a couple things I see. A lot of times I used to do this. Go off in the corner office when the CEO or CMO come running out. Oh, here's the positioning. This is great. Yeah. Never works, right? And because you don't get your best thinking. I think it's really great to get the power of everybody and the product teams and particularly sales. And there's always a lot of times a lot of chasm between sales and marketing. Bring them into the fold, right? This is your position, and get their viewpoint in it. So when we're done, sales has ownership of it. Product has ownership of it. It's just not marketing or the CEOs, it's theirs. That's one thing. The other thing is that I was going to say is have a process, right? Have a process, run a process. Whether it's a Firebrick process or not, get a process. And the other advantage is a third party person, whether it's Firebrick or whoever. I heard a lot of time the objectives. Well, I hired this really smart CMO. They should be able to do positioning. Why should I hire you?
Right.
And my response to that is, well, number one, You can't hire a CMO that's done 300 positionings. No. You can't, right? Number two, we've got a process. But number three, everybody can't see it anymore. You're too close to it. Bring an outside view. And it's really hard for a marketing or any executive to get up there and try to facilitate all the executives. I can stand up in front of a room, say the stupid things, push back on people, and it's a lot easier for me to do it. And it's easier for me because I don't have a perspective. I'm not wedded to the past. So I can see things from a fresh perspective that perhaps can't be seen anymore in the company because you're too close to it anymore.
Yeah.
So I would say CEO sponsor, have a process, make it a company wide and get an outside facilitator to run the thing and get it done fast. I was just talking to a company today. We've been working on our positioning since March and it's still not done. Jesus, just let us come in. We get the damn thing done in 2 weeks and get out, right? Get going. You don't have to waste any more sales cycles. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, sorry, Matt. Was that a breath that you were taking in the breath to say something, or?
I was going to ask a question. Like, what is, people, what I've seen from a lot of companies is they sort of either they're raising their first round or they're coming out of seed and they've achieved some kind of financial milestone. And it's usually around the time where they're thinking about hiring a CMO that they're really starting to think about positioning. Where do you think in a company's journey is the right time to, it's always the right time to nail your positioning, but like at what point, do you typically see the most successful companies that you work for start working with you? Is it in that $20 million range, $50 million range? When is it appropriate?
That's a great question. I think first off, you always need good positioning.
Yes.
But what we're seeing, I think it's really critical when you're ready to scale. If you're a smaller company, you got product market fit. The founders no longer can be in every sales engagement, right? They're going to hire 20, 30 reps and we're ready to scale. So we need a consistent, concise, easy message, right? That's one point. The other point is, again, when you become if you're a category leader and everybody else comes in, right? And you're not differentiating anymore, that's another inflection point. The other one is when you move from a single product company to a multi-product company. That's another inflection point as well.
Yeah.
Now, the other inflection point I'm seeing right now is everybody's got to have an AI story. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got to have an AI story. And so we're getting called in a lot just for AI strategy or AI stories because everybody needs one right now. Boy, that's a whole nother thing. It reminds me of the era of cloud. Everybody had a cloud story, right? And there's so much cloud washing. Well, same thing's happening now. AI washing's happening right now. So we got some frameworks that we found is really working. We're working with not only AI native companies, but also with companies like HPE. What's their AI strategy? And, also other cloud-based companies. Everybody needs an AI story right now. So we're seeing a big uptick in interest, and it just can't be stick AI on there and that's what we are. It's just so stupid, right?
Yeah.
Actually, AI is a driver of more of the issue that you brought up, which is focus on the problem.
Totally.
Not the features. Exactly. AI has created another monster, man. I mean,
well,
seriously.
I'll give you some, here's what we're seeing that's working in AI. Again, it's not AI for AI's sake, just like you talked about. What's the problem it solves? And can you build a case you have a specialized type of AI?
Yeah.
And name it, right? The XYZ AI, because it's specialized. It's not general purpose. And the other key thing is the data, as you know. Name the data, right? It's based on XYZ data. So it's not generic AI, it's specialized AI. And name the data too. It's trained on this certain data core, a certain kind of data here, and name that as well. And then what's the big problem it solves, right? That's the thing. And then you have to have the whole governance conversation, of course, in there about explainable and et cetera, auditable, that sort of thing. But we found that that's the winning ticket for positioning of AI today.
That's beautiful. I love that. Wait, Matt, can I jump? I have one more thing I wanted to revisit, or did you have one?
No, go ahead. I mean, I could monopolize Bob's time this entire call. Like, the company that I currently work for, I think checks 3 of the 4 boxes that he was discussing. So,
Well, if you want to keep going, I honestly
no.
go
I
ahead.
need to have a private conversation with him afterwards.
Okay, all right. So, you're going to take it offline, is what I like to say.
I might take it offline.
Yeah. You actually said something earlier about where it felt like, so you did two. You talked about the actual process of selling, right? And that, when you're thinking about positioning and you're, in the case of you working with customers, but everyone should be thinking about is, how does the revenue come to life and how does the positioning come in? And then you also said something interesting, which felt like you were looking at different parts of the sales cycle when you said, well, look, I'm going to give you this, go give it to your boss. And I was really intrigued by that because I feel like good messaging, good positioning, all of these things as it gets manifested into the sales team is just the opening deck.
That's right.
That's not how it should be. We got to think about what are all the interactions that we have on the way to winning the deal, and how does the positioning play in each one. So I'd love to, since Matt's going to take some of these things offline, I'll jump in.
It's interesting. It depends on, what do you emphasize in what part of the sales cycle with the positioning? I think, there's a couple things we look at. Look at sales cycles. Is it you're trying to, it's a different positioning strategy. If I'm in a highly competitive, almost commoditized market, the positioning is usually downstream. There's already a buying cycle going on, and the conversation is why we're different, right? The other end of it is there maybe you have to generate a sales cycle, right? So it's more like, what's the problem you solve? And that's really what you emphasize, right? But it's not an either or, but it depends on the point of emphasis based upon, where you are in that sales cycle. I think one thing I wanted to mention, you just spurred this, is how do you even measure positioning, right? Should it be measured, right? Oh, no, that's just marketing stuff. I think we're spending money, but I'm not sure if it's making any difference. Here's how I think every client of ours, we say, okay, let's set up very specific positioning objectives. And they should be things like win-loss ratio, right? Is your win rate getting better? Yeah. The length of your sales cycle. Are you is the position creating urgency in sales cycles? So it's collapsing from 6 months to 3 months on average. What percentage of your sales cycles do you actually engage an executive buyer, right? Those are some, and is your ARR or even CLV increasing, right, per deal and per engagement? The other thing we look at too is from a category perspective. Are the market analysts starting to pick up your viewpoint? Are they starting to pick up your language, right? Are they starting to write about using some of your language, right? And of course, it takes a while, but you're moving up in the magic quadrant, so to speak, or wherever. But right. A lot of market analysts, frankly, they're just reporting the past. And I always tell companies, by the time a market analyst calls a category, you're already lost, right? The winners have already been crowned, and so a lot of companies spend a lot of time worried about what the market analysts are thinking. And I'd rather worry about what the buyers, frankly, are thinking and focus the thing on that, and understand you have to play the market analyst games. But boy, they report the past a lot. There's not a lot of new thinking coming out of that, unfortunately, like they used to out of that group.
Yep. I was an analyst at Gartner.
Right?
And I learned a lot. Man. Well, hey, man, I learned a lot. Everyone talks about they basically, you've got, from an organizational perspective, they have to make sure that they can't make a bet on a category that won't win in the long term.
The different
and it's like, so, but I did once meet he was like a Wall Street guy. I was at some, party with, that with a bunch of those types there, which, by the way, they like to drink hard alcohol, just as a heads up there. So the guy was saying, one of their investment strategies is they were PE, I think, maybe, I don't know, but if there's already a magic quadrant, they're out.
Yeah.
They gotta
Right.
they gotta beat them to the punch. Yeah, it's really interesting. All right, cool. So Matt, do you have one in that you don't want to take offline that you can ask to expose the whole crowd as we sort of wind this thing down?
I think one thing that probably a lot of marketers think about when they're working with an outside agency is, how am I going to explain this to my board?
Yeah, totally.
Right? Like, how am I going to tell my board, like, hey, I know I was brought on to do this, but I'm working with someone else to help. I think a lot of people have fear around those types of things.
Yeah, and they do. And that's why I say it should be a CEO initiative, right? But say it isn't, right? If you're a CMO, how do you sell this? I think you got to sell it a couple of ways. Number one, we need to bring a process in here, right? Number two, we need to bring in a specialist. I'm good at positioning, but I've done positioning once a year, maybe for 12, 15 years, right?
Yeah.
This is so important right now. We can't fuck around, right?
Yeah.
We're going to miss our market opportunity. We gotta make the investment. We got to bring a specialist in here that has a process. The other thing is, I got a full-time job, just trying to keep the pipeline going and all that stuff. I need a dedicated resource that's going to drive it through the company and get the thing done. And the third thing is, and the fourth thing is, we can't see it anymore. We need some fresh ideas right in here. So that's typically how it's sold up.
I do feel like the board, now that I have exposure to, in the role that I'm in, it is important that they know, like a lot of them do know that we have a positioning problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Am I crazy on that? Because like I
think you're right.
Yeah, and then that's probably from a CMO perspective, unless they invented some positioning and that's part of the issue. But you do need that, Matt. I definitely can understand that trepidation, right? And that's why it is important, and it is common. Well, maybe not common, but it is a thing where the board and then the CEO do understand that they have a positioning problem. Yeah. I think they also would understand we're selling the problem, not the features, like with the stuff Bob brought up, which is like, here comes the cavalry. And what's our story? Our story could be the solution to that.
That's right.
I think in a lot of cases it is. I mean, there's a feature thing, but like the way people can create features now, it can be fast and they can have some parity up pretty quickly. It is typically a story positioning problem.
Yeah. Just so you guys know, I'm going to lose battery here really, really quickly here. So if I
abruptly
leave
we're at the end. You know what, Bob? You gotta work with a battery company so that we don't have these issues
all I can
anymore.
do is positioning. Everything else just go. My life is hell.
Battery consulting agency on the side.
The rest of my life is chaos. The positioning.
That's me too. I can attest that. All right, well, look, guys, like that was amazing. I
loved it. So great.
Yeah, that was crazy. We don't talk about it enough. So like, it was really, really interesting to me. It's so fundamental. I'm embarrassed that we don't talk about it enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, that's so embarrassing. I'm so embarrassed.
Don't waste all your go-to-market investments on shitty messaging.
Boom. There we go.
That's the transaction.
That's the transaction for you. All right. Well, awesome, Bob. Thanks for coming on, man. Before you lose your battery, I appreciate you. All right, guys. Thanks, Sam. Good work. All right. Take it easy.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Transaction. Craig and I really appreciate the fact that you've listened all the way to the end. What are you actually doing here? For show notes and other episodes, please visit us at thetransactionpod.com. Like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place you get your podcast from. Either you have walked away from your podcast device, or this is playing somewhere in the background. Someone in your house would really like for you to shut this off now.